I think seeing that if you do want to have that flexibility in this Faceless Void, you say, okay, you have a now melee hero as your position 5, so I'm going to feel completely okay standing in my Sandstorm. So now they really have a difficult decision to make on the Hokori side if this is going to be a Hoodwink Faceless Void in the bottom lane, which would definitely feel better versus the Clockwork Sand King. But the bigger issue that Hokori still need to figure out is what is Witch going to play? Are we going to see him pull out the Tusk possibly that we've seen a lot of the South American teams go for? Really, it's just the Tusk or the SB for me. If it's anything else, it'd be out of my ballpark. Well, a lot of these South American teams, despite the power of it, don't really favor the Dark Portrait that we sometimes see some of the NA teams pick up when we do see heroes like this Luna. And of course, it absolutely slays. Once you get that Dark Portrait, it feels fantastic to have it on your team. But it is 4,200 gold. It is pretty difficult to obtain. But okay, different direction. Now we have the Tiaras Medusa, which is now going to give you the advantage versus this Luna. We always talk about the ranged advantage where we have heroes like the Luna, like the Gyrocopter, where you pick this Medusa, and now you're going to really struggle to straight up fight her. And now I guess this is going to solve this Faceless Void into that more support-oriented role. So, okay, I see what Hokori are putting down.
And that's the workaround as well to the problem I was sort of describing earlier with maybe needing Tiaras on the Faceless Void to have damage in the Chrono, but as long as that Faceless Void isn't putting that Chronosphere smack dab center on the Luna, your Medusa is going to have the range to sort of hit into that bubble. So the Faceless Void may not be the one with the damage, but they have... Actually, I was going to say an equivalent damage dealer. In the Medusa, they have, honestly, an even better one. So Hokori have sort of swung this in an interesting direction for themselves, and it's up to Infamous now to try and deal with that Medusa, but you've got to deal with it with only one pick remaining. So it really feels like Hokori have sort of pulled one out of the hat here on the back end.
Yeah, and in retrospect, it does make sense that this Faceless Void, as soon as it was picked in its inception, was going to be in that 4/5 role, because you do have this problem where now that you have this Faceless Void Darkseer, you don't have damage. You don't have something to throw in Chrono. You don't exactly put the wall on top of the Chronosphere and then wait for the illusions to expire. It just doesn't have combination. It's not a play that you would make. So the Medusa does make sense in that respect. But really now, I want to see this Faceless Void be a little bit more successful. We've seen Pandaboo played before. We saw it in that previous series, and it has its strength. It has its very early timing. But after that, it really feels like Feast or Famine, where you throw out your Chrono, great. Does it matter how much you get? I feel like in this draft, it really does, where you don't have that guaranteed stun necessarily. You've got the Bushwhack, which we talk about. It's such a fantastic stun, but it's good to be the stun after your stun. It's good to be the follow-up. It's not necessarily what you want to lead with. So if this Faceless Void does start to fall behind, we've seen so many Faceless Voids at this tournament struggle to make plays, struggle to get levels, and then they're just another target for Infamous to then feed on, get the constant pickoffs. It's just a liability at that point, where we really need to see what I can only assume is going to be Gardic on this Faceless Void, because he does play sort of those atypical 5s, but we need to see him really play well, really stand in front of his Medusa, because if you look at it that way, their team fight's fantastic. If a fight starts out with Stone Gaze, Chrono, everything landing, really Infamous have one option, and that's to disruption and then back out. And that's where we're really going to see a tempo-based lineup coming out of Infamous, where Hokori, very similar playstyle with the Medusa consistently, you're going to want to wait for your fights. You're going to wait till you get this monster that they can't deal with. And I love the Pango. Now you've got that little bit of chaos, and no one touches it on the Infamous side.
And it's, I believe, yeah, it should be an analog Pango as well. So very rarely does he seem to sort of just miss the mark with that Pangolier selection. But now, if you're Hokori, this lineup is so perfect if you're the team sort of dictating where the fights happen. Infamous are not going to have any sort of ability to reposition in these fights. You're going to get caught in the Chrono if you try to get away. There's Stone Gaze, there's Surge, there's a Rolling Thunder. There might even be the Dilation out from the Faceless Void to really just slow them down even further. So the Storm Spirit is going to help, but the Storm Spirit almost kind of plays into that a little bit as well. If he gets hit up by any of that slow, you have heroes like the Storm and the Sand King who will have to use their abilities to reposition instead of trying to do so on foot. And if you're using something like a Burrow or a Zip to just get into or out of the fight and avoid getting locked down, then you're obviously not saving that for any sort of actual aggressive play. So I see a scenario here where Hokori could just kind of dance around their opponents and really put Infamous into a sort of tight box that they are forced to fight in.
Yeah, it's just going to come down to how tight can Infamous play, because if the Storm Spirit is caught without mana, if he's stuck in this fight, Hokori are so adept at running down their opponents with both the Pango and the Darkseer. You just run every single player at that Storm Spirit. And we've seen this Pango before, where if you ever get that Storm caught up in your Rolling Thunder, he is just dead. You will pretty much always get that chain CC onto him at that point. While even though Hikori don't have the highest lockdown, it really only takes one or two fights where things can really start to spiral out of control. At the same time, if Infamous can get a lead, if they can get those easy rotations, it's very simple for Alone to come to that Darkseer's lane, find him pushing out the waves. They can get those pickoffs, that will propel them forward, where maybe Lumiere is going to be able to stay ahead. I think Lumiere versus Tiaras is a very interesting matchup because they're very, very similar players. They play more or less the same game. They always have their Steam out stacking for them. I think with these specific heroes, Infamous will have a little bit of an advantage in that regard. It's just a little bit easier for that Shadow Demon to make that rotation, where if you can stay ahead of this Medusa, we've seen it time and time again, you can stay an item up on the snake when you are this Luna, you hit that Daedalus Agshard timing, and then it feels like they can't win. But you miss your timing, you have to wait for it. Maybe your other members of the team have to wait for your Storm Spirit and your Sand King to come online. You get that Aghanim Scepter, you get the Cold Blooded, you get that level 20 talent, and then suddenly every single Aghanim Shard, Lucent Beam that you send out is just a snake coming at you, and it's just an unable to win matchup at that point.
Yeah, your options if the Medusa gets to that sort of critical mass are just basically non-existent. You kind of almost have to wait for your opponents to make a mistake if it does get to that point in the game. So we'll see what Infamous can do to try and maybe push the tempo a little bit, prevent the Medusa from building herself up to that point. But for now, we do have a bit of a pause coming out here. No one's DC'd at least, so there's sort of your good news. But looks like we might just have a little bit of an issue at the start. Infamous, though, say that they're ready to go.
Just those darn Peru servers. Something's always messed up with them, and we're sitting on a little bit of ping. I know I'm on ping, but it should be interesting, especially that mid matchup. We've seen, unfortunately, Pangos before give up kills very early to the Storm Spirit. And when you talk about the spirits, I always bring it up. It comes down to who has that rune control, who is able to play on the enemy team side of the map. Whoever gets to control that river really propels that Storm Spirit forward. You just get to make so many more plays when you have those runes available to you, as opposed to being forced to really just play with what you got. You really like to have that snowball factor always in play.
For now, we did see Infamous go for a bit of a smoke play. All five smoked up. They're not quite perfectly together, but you see them moving their way into the north side jungle. Smoke dissipates before they really run into anybody, but this is going to get them presumably some deep vision. You see the ward being thrown down. That's pretty far back in between the waves, or in between the towers, excuse me. So they'll have vision on the creep waves coming up. They should presumably see some couriers unless they get sort of maybe wound through the jungle itself, but that is going to be an interesting one for the Infamous side. We'll see how much they can do with that vision. The other ward, meanwhile, thrown down on their opponent's side of the map as well. So really a focus on aggressive warding, which we've mentioned before is maybe not quite a calling card, but something we see these South American teams really emphasize more than some of their counterparts in NA. They really like to have those wards down, that vision deeper on their opponent's side, even if it sometimes maybe comes at the expense of having a direct ward over the middle lane.
Yeah, and for these wards, whenever we see the eye spot scouted out, it's typically to scout their opponents going for those easy plays or even just the early contestants, because we are going to see usually 2 to 3 heroes rotate around those runes. And with these wards, you are going to scout out those Medusa stacks just a little bit sooner, where maybe your Luna who comes online, at least if Lumiere decides to go for that build, maybe 2 to 3 levels earlier. And then if you can steal those stacks, that is the only thing that matters. That's something that Storm Spirit and Pango are both very adept at doing, and something that is almost a calling card of the South American play this deep into the patch. Everyone tries to steal everyone else's stacks, and that's where a lot of these early fights, these early heavy rotations end up revolving around.
So much of an emphasis on that, especially, as you said, with the way that South America plays and the way that the meta sort of developed. It becomes so much about these kind of hyper carry scenarios, so you can take that away, you put yourself ahead while simultaneously really just sticking it to your opponents. So we'll see, first of all, when those stacks start really coming into play, and then who ends up actually taking them. Take a look down bot. This is Gonna be a bit of an interesting one. Vitali on the Darkseer obviously can do some work with the Ion Shell, but Widge, as a ranged hero, is maybe not always going to be
So, this
directly
whole
in there
mess
for
is
that
all
Ion
your
Shell
fault?
damage. He's not the one that you're going to try and send forward in a lot of situations, but right now, Widge is actually being forced back a bit. Going forward with the Battery Assault, but with that Creep Wave, you are going to lose maybe the back third of the actual Battery Assault, but he's just trying to trade out as best as he can here, and well, it is going to be difficult against Widge. That is always the thing about this Hoodwink, as you see the Bushwhack come out onto Lumiere. You are going to be hard-pressed to really just straight up win some of those fights.
And we've seen before how strong this Hoodwink is at trading into those melee pos 5s. We see already the trade starting to go in the Hoodwink's favor. And in addition to that, we haven't felt the discrepancy that they are playing with, where you don't have that melee hero where you very simply put the Ion Shell on, and then there's no way for this Lunar to walk up to the waves. But Widge is doing actually a really good job. I really like his itemization. He's just the hitter. He is going to punish Lumiere every single time he tries to go up for these creeps, and he's successfully winning this trades, as well as being forced to pick this melee hero along with the Luna. You're going to see that Lunar Blessing just not be as efficient, and needs to get
Uh-oh.
mangoed.
Oh,
Oh,
he's
what a
dead!
vac.
Oh,
What a sick
Vitali.
vac from Vitali.
Big, big plays. Realizes at a certain point, yeah, the clock's stuck in here. He trapped himself, so he yoinks him out of his own cogs, puts him on the wrong side for the Clockwork to get away as well, and just a nice and, I'm not, well, maybe not easy first blood, but Vitali certainly made it look that way with the vacuum. So now Lumiere, this is not going to be fun. Sure, you can get the Clockwork back in, he can maybe deliver some items out to you, but you're sort of going it alone for a little bit, and Vitali is immediately attempting to take advantage of that. You see him playing forward, the Ion Shell comes out there, but now A is back into the fight. This time he gets the Cog Trap in onto the Hoodwink, so Widge is in some serious trouble here. No point up in the Scurry, so he really can't get away, and A is going to be able to get himself a little bit of revenge. Widge gets taken down, and, well, they already gave up first blood, but at least you're immediately able to answer, and that is going to make things a bit easier for Lumiere now in this lane.
And really just the nifty TP coming in from A right in the tree line, so you weren't able to react at all on that Hoodwink, so you end up falling, as well as, fortunately, during that time,
Where do
the
you
Hoodwink
think you
was
are,
able to get
Hokori?
that stack and pull off, so it's not like Lumiere is just going to immediately get the lane back in his favor. He actually just had to sit there and let Vitali sort of tank the creeps, wasn't able to make them connect, which does mean that this is going to be the Darkseer continuing to accelerate and not get punished for not having Surge, because again, he had to sculpt that vacuum just to get that first blood, but you're going to take that every single day of the week. But Vitali has been so untouched in this lane. He already has his third item, or third mana item coming out to him, so you're going to see this Darkseer really start to farm. He really doesn't have to worry about anything anymore.
And you see he's got the highest last hit count on his own side, and he's really only a couple behind the Storm Spirit, so your offlaner is keeping a farming pace with the mid laners on both teams. That's fantastic for Hokori, but a potential point of concern for Infamous, especially considering Lumiere is still trying to sort of catch up a little bit. So we'll see what they can do on that front. A, meanwhile, is getting hit up a little bit. Widge continues to try and apply that pressure, and now with A sort of forced out of the lane for a moment, Vitali and Widge can try to push forward with the Ion Shells once again. So, well, I said before that kill was going to make life a little bit easier for Lumiere, but a little bit is sort of the operative phrase there. It's better than it would have been without the kill, but it's still not fantastic.
Yeah, and it's just some small misplays coming from the Infamous side where you didn't scout out the small camp status up until the 3-minute mark. You've let this triple stack now happen,
Oh,
and
Vacuum actually pulls them both in. A is going to be taken
so
down.
clean. So clean.
Yeah,
Really well
Vitali's,
played.
he's just putting on a bit of a show here across the first couple of minutes. That's now 2 kills for the Darkseer. Of course, neither one of them have come at the Luna's expense directly, but as we were just sort of talking about, the lane is not great for her, and it's going to get a little bit worse, but now Sacred, he's actually getting jumped in on the top lane. Michael, good defensive disruption there, but I don't think that's really going to be enough to save the day. The Burrow Strike still comes through, but it's only level 1, so he wasn't really able to go that far, and Hokori continued to track him down. Tiaris will get the kill as well, so Analog's first rotation is a successful one. 3 kills to 1 on the board for Hokori, and a 1k net worth lead. They really are trying to sort of set the tone here early on.
Yeah, and you see the slight misplay coming in from Malone. He had been greedy with his mana. He was farming very aggressively, and having that water rune be relatively contested, he didn't have his TP there. He's got another one coming out to him, but you start to get counter-rotated a little bit, and then you really start to fall behind. You never want to see your Storm Spirit on full mana unless he's actively making these plays. Unfortunately, we'll get that regen rune. But now with Storm Spirits, we really do see them go for this more farm-oriented build. He does have that Orchid queued up, so we're not seeing the Kaya rush that we typically see built up by a lot of Storm Spirits nowadays, especially in the NA region. But once he gets this Orchid, this will, again, allow him to make that easy TP rotation. Whenever Vitaly eventually is between your towers, when Lumiere decides to ditch the lane, that's when the play is going to be made from him. But you have to be careful. You have to bide your time because you do have this playmaker in the Pangolier going for that Echo Saber build as well. And once he gets that Echo Saber build, every single swash is going to force that much more mana out of Alone. And he's actually trying to go for the kill top on Tiaras, but this is a very difficult kill. I don't know if they get this unless he
They're gonna
really
try.
misplays.
Shield is gonna get activated.
Well,
Is there a TP in? Yes, there is. They're getting Gardic up here and Alone. Yeah, he doesn't want to be here anymore. He's gonna try to get away. And it looks like he should be able to zip out, but while that was going down in the top lane, down bot A, he's going to get caught again. Vitaly is able to find his third kill of the match, so really, top lane just sort of a bit of a distraction. It was a risk on the Infamous side. Unfortunately for them, it's not going to pay off, but you got to give credit to Hokori there. They get Gardic in almost immediately. Analog even sort of rotated up just to make sure, and now back down bot. Lumiere has been caught. They realize there's no one coming to help him as everyone was preoccupied top, so Vitaly goes in again. It's Witch who gets the kill this time, but that is a massive pickoff onto the Luna.
yeah, it's the level 6 timing, and I think it's just Alone identifying the wrong target there. They had 5 Shadow Poison stacks, sure. The Medusa is going to take a little bit more damage, but you don't have very much else coming from your teammates. He even skilled up the Epicenter at level 6, something you typically don't see Sand Kings do because you want to wait for that Blink Dagger before you ever really want to commit a skill point, and it just feels pretty awful. Maybe you do whiff then on Analog. You don't get anything, but you show yourself top, even though you're not pushing in mid or farming that small camp. The bottom lane is just a little bit too much of a success. They hit that level 6 that little bit sooner, and it just feels pretty bad if you're Infamous now, because you look at Vitaly, he has a point booster. You are going to get this Ags at a breakneck speed, and that is where the damage mitigation versus Storm Spirit is really going to come into effect, where if you aren't killing these heroes in those early team fights with that Soul Catcher buff, you're going to be playing versus another 200 to 300 HP that your Storm Spirit doesn't have enough mana to kill. And that's where you're really going to see Alone start to struggle, start to decide to maybe not make as many plays as he otherwise would, because you just have not enough mana, plain and simple. And going for the Orchid build, he isn't going to have enough mana if he isn't able to get those kills really just in his Orchid timing.
And this just feels so strong from Hokori. They recognize something we were sort of talking about heading into the game. If the Medusa can build herself up, you are going to be in a fantastic position. So, Infamous are very likely going to try and push the tempo on us, try and get us sort of on the back foot early on so that Medusa gets slowed down. So, Hokori decide, well, we're just going to play a faster tempo ourselves. If Vitaly can get this full Aghanim Scepter going at around the 12 or 13 minute mark, we are set up to potentially either take fights directly in that early stage while Tiaras farms, or we're going to be so tanky with that Ion Shell upgrade that Infamous won't feel comfortable pushing into us, as you were describing, and then you've bought that time anyway. So either you can be aggressive directly yourself, or you ward off the aggression from the other side. Either way, Infamous are going to have to make some rather drastic changes to try and get that up-tempo style that they're going to need to try and slow the Medusa. As Medusa Alone zipping his way in, doesn't get onto Witch, but he does spot Analog, but Analog's got a DD, and this is going to get a little bit awkward. He's zipping out as best as he can. It looks like he is going to be okay. Vitaly, I don't know, maybe the vacuum, or excuse me, not the vacuum, the wall did not need to be thrown down, but its presence definitively forces the storm away, and that's a little bit of what I was just talking about. They're too strong right now. Infamous can't find any easy pickoffs.
And honestly, it isn't too bad. Of course, 100-second cooldown, but you get that illusion, you get more pressure on this bottom tower, and pressure that the Sand King at the same time can't put on to these buildings. You even see Gardic taking a creep wave all the way back near his tier 2 tower because he is giving no plays. But Alone was making the correct decision there. I think that is the lane that he needs to go to. Really, the Hoodwink and the Darkseer are the vulnerable targets, but at this stage of the game, I don't think Vitaly is a target anymore. I think he is no longer the easy one to kill, and that's where we need to see a few more levels coming out from Infamous's supports, because otherwise, you're really going to see the plays slow down from their side, but they're playing against the damage mitigation lineup. You're playing versus Darkseer Medusa. You are going to slow down, and if you can't itemize that damage, that's where we really see these two differing draft styles come to a head pretty much every single time nowadays. Infamous are trying to build for damage, Hokori are trying to build to tank it up, and then whoever wins is just the victor. Usually we see the Medusa win, though, unfortunately.
Mhm.
It's a much more boring style of Dota, but if it works, why change it?
Especially if you're Hokori right now, you need a 2-0 sweep in this series to get yourself into that upper bracket. So boring but effective is kind of going to be the name of the game for them. And if you're Infamous, like you said, that was the right decision from the Storm. Alone's got to try to do something here. He is really the man who's going to have to make these initiations. Maybe with the Blink Dagger finished off on the Sand King, you can also get Sacred a bit more involved, but it does come down to Alone the vast majority of the time to try and be the
Oh,
initiator.
bottom.
As Vitaly, okay, good jump in. They start with the Purge. They throw down the Epi as well. Vitaly, though, drops down the vacuum into the wall. They're going to be able to get Analog in there with the Rolling Thunder as well, but wasn't enough to save Vitaly's life. He will still fall. Analog, though, is hoping for some sort of pickoff to the south as Michael bought time for himself with the disruption. Now Sacred comes in for the stun. Michael, can he somehow get away? He needs to get through the trees if he could just create a little bit more, but Analog is able to hit him up with the... Okay, able to hit him up with the Swashbuckler. TP's away. Alone did not actually have the Vortex off cooldown there, so wasn't going to be able to cancel that one out. But if you're Infamous, that's a 2-for-1, and you get Vitaly. He's the sort of most valuable hero on the map right now in terms of just pure net worth and the... I believe it was a killing spree he was on? Yeah, so a little bit of extra money going into your pockets there. That's what Infamous need.
Hopefully Lumiere doesn't lose his life here, though.
Yeah. There's the Chrono. Vitaly's in for the Ion Shells. They get the Sharpshooter down there as well, I believe. So Lumiere's in a bit of a rough spot. Nice vacuum to pull him back in. Michael, though, he went for the disruption onto Vitaly, hoping Lumiere could run away. Doesn't work out. Lumiere will fall. They do get Gardic in exchange, though, as Alone zips his way in, but that's your carry dead for a position 5 Faceless Void. It's not quite the trade-off Infamous wanted, but if we're looking for silver linings, which at this point we definitely are for Infamous, Alone is the one to get the kill. So he is personally maybe building up a little bit more momentum here, trying to move his way up that net worth chart. Because right now, he's sitting in 5th. That is not where you need him to be, but they're trying to make some plays somewhere, and that's really the best that they can do right now.
And you see Alone as well, shifting over to the Kai Sanj build. Love this. It's exactly what he needs to do. Has a little bit more mana to play with. That's the only problem with Orchid, unless you really need the silence to hold these heroes down, which on the Hokori side, maybe for the Faceless Void, but if you can kill him in that vortex, that's all that matters, because you can actually make plays with your hero. And I think that's where Infamous, they did hit a very strong note. They had the hook shot, they had the blink epi, they got that pressure alleviated off of Alone. They had those secondary and third playmakers to finally allow something to happen on the map. But they're still playing catch-up. They've got to get this tier 1 tower top. They've got to think about collapsing on mid, where Hokori are still playing just a little bit faster than them in that regard. And it's something that Infamous can't really do until you get that Luna involved. You didn't see Lumiere coming top just to make sure that tower does go down. That's where Hokori have a much simpler lineup where they can bide their time. They can wait for their items. And I think Vitaly now completing his Aghanim Scepter. This is what I was worried about. This is a very, very fast Aghanim Scepter. So whoever gets shelled, they are going to be safe, or at least safer. So that way this Storm Spirit now has to be very cautious whenever he jumps in. If he's not able to get that burst, or he's not able to get that exact situation that he actually wants to jump on, he is going to get kited, he's going to die, and he's going to get cleaned up.
You just limit, again, the options that are available. You see Gardic here with the on-shell on him, 1240 HP. That's, I mean, it's not massive. He's not just an absolute beast, but it's more health than I think the Storm is going to be able to get through in the couple second long window he'll have where he's safe. Obviously, there's time beyond that point where he could still pursue the kill, but at that point you leave yourself open to counterattack. So you take away that ability for the quick in and out for Alone onto all but the absolute weakest heroes in the lineup for Hokori, and what happens? If your Storm can't make those plays, now what do you do? Lumiere is obviously going to continue farming, but now the focus shifts away from the Storm and maybe more onto the Sand King, but Sacred would still probably prefer to build himself up a little bit more. He's got the Blink Burrow, but damage-wise, he's really relying just on the Epi to follow that up.
And that's why I like in Sacred's Quick Buy, we do see that Veil, because it would help his team out so much, give him that little bit of burst damage, especially with the Luna. We've seen so many Lunas go for that Aghanim Scepter after a few items, and it just feels incredibly strong. And he's trying to make plays here, but
he's
a little
walking
obvious.
into a lot of people. He's going to try for the...
Oh, he missed it on Alone.
Good attempt, that's for sure, but wasn't quite able to make it happen. Yeah, I think he was aiming for either the creeps or Alone. Either one would have worked out, but Not able to make that happen. He does get taken down, but at least his death gets everyone else away from the fight. Although, as I say that, Michael, yeah, he's not quite out of the woods just yet. He's trying to get himself away, but Gardic time walks forward. The dilation actually does clip Michael, so he is slowed down. The Bushwhack's going to lock him in place, and Hokori will be able to find this secondary kill, but it's not on to Lumiere. The Luna's at least able to get away, but that is 2 of your heroes being taken down there.
And unfortunately, using that hook shot, it will be up in 20 seconds, but they've got to do something about mid. They have the glyph available to them. They can mitigate some of the damage happening, but it's so much easier for TRs to make these rotations than it is for Lumiere right now. Lumiere has gone for the less greedy build. He's got full Lucent Beam. He doesn't have that second point in Eclipse just yet, but you're playing in a Chronosphere. They really need to get that perfect jump either onto the Hoodwink or the Faceless Void. Otherwise, this happens. You lose your buildings, you're set up a little bit after the fact, and you have to respond with 5 heroes on Infamous, because if they do show in those side lanes, it means that Hokori can take the jump with really no risk factor, and they can't allow themselves to get caught off guard. But you see the 4 heroes on Hokori now playing in Infamous's jungle while TRS is farming the triangle. This is a pretty bad situation for them because it is the damage mitigation game. If they can itemize too many items to deal with you, then they are going to outlast you every single day of the week. And bottom, it's a good smoke up if Vitaly gives him the play though, but he's going to be pretty measured here. They're just playing around their vision very beautifully on the Hokori side.
There's so much discipline from Hokori, and now they see their target. They jump in onto A, but there's going to be the jump in as well from Sacred and Alone. They make the play to get the Epi down onto Vitaly. They immediately take him out of the fight, and now if you're Hokori, do you really want to go back in, or is this where you try to cut your losses? Gardic is going to get caught out. His TP will be canceled, but...
And actually,
wait, is he stuck?
He cliffed himself. He's
boy.
RTZ'd.
Yeah, there's not too many ways for him to get out. He could have tried to use the sharpshooter, but it's not available, so he's going to now get pulled down by Alone, but it's just going to be a death for him. Michael will be taken down, though. Good play from Alone. Excuse me, good play from Analog, excuse me, as he's able to TP himself out. And now, yeah, Alone zipped up to this hill, then got knocked onto this hill, but it's a storm. He's not really stuck for all that long. He was able to TP himself out, but if you're Infamous, that fight goes very well. Your 2 supports die, but you trade them out for 3, and Alone gets money. Sacred's involved there. Your team fight's starting to come together a little bit more. So if you're Hokori, now is not the time to sort of take your foot off the gas. The execution now needs to continue to improve. You can't afford to sort of take steps backwards. Otherwise, we're going to see plays like that one. And in fact, Infamous have actually clawed their way to a 1K net worth lead in the aftermath of that fight, too.
Yeah, and it is strange from Hokori. They were doing such a good job for such a long time there, but whenever both supports get caught out there, they tried to make the soul kill onto the Clockwork, but they had no damage dealer. I think maybe they thought that Analog was a little bit closer. He was going for a rune at the time, I believe, and they get punished for it. If they're able to show their backs, there was no Chrono that went off there. There was not many spells coming in from the Darkseer either. And if they're not using their spells, they will die. Those are the situations in which Infamous can actually get in and actually make these plays. But the danger zone is going to be once we get those 4 staffs, once we get those pipes, once we get those truly strong items. That's where Infamous's lineup is going to feel slightly outpaced. But that's why I like what Lumiere is doing. He's getting this BKB now. Once he has the BKB, he's going to be a little bit more confident showing into the fights that Pango is also going to exist in. But really, with the way that both of these players play, TRS and Lumiere, I don't think we'll see an attempt towards the Roshan. Usually we see one team be the one forcing the enemy team to make that rotation, but neither carry will probably go for that until they have either a BKB or a crit stick, and that is yet to be seen. Oh, Widge found him.
Got himself caught out. Sharpshooter's being channeled. They will make the connection. Analog's now in with the Rolling Thunder, and they do take Michael down. So, relatively quick kill for Hokori there. They've got a lot of heroes grouped up, and... Oh, wait, hold up. Sacred. Oh, boy.
Oh, they don't see him. Just barely.
Analog actually has his courier, though. He could have maybe flown it over to try and get the vision, but I don't think they suspected that Sacred was there. They check sort of the other areas in the tree line, and they figure he's not hiding out anymore. So... well, Sacred, nerves of steel there. He just sort of sits and hopes that nobody spots him, and he actually hasn't even left yet. He's still hanging out in this area. There we go. He'll TP himself out now. He's making his way to the tier 2, and he's got Epi. They're going to look for the fight. They want in. There's going to be the burrow onto 3. The zip in from Alone. They even hook shot in from A, so Gardic is already dead. They're going to try and blow up Analog as well. They don't have him yet, but there's going to be the last bit of damage they need. Analog taken down. Widge falls as well, and... well, time to bail for Hokori. Fantastic play from Sacred. The sort of discipline to stay in that tree line and not really move because he wasn't actually spotted, and then the presence of mind to then TP to that tier 2 tower, knowing that's where Hokori had to have gone since they didn't back off. It leads into a fantastic team fight for Infamous.
And really just questionable decisions on the Hokori side. Why is Gardic and Vitali both hitting the tier 2 tower here? It
Tiaras.
really doesn't make a lot of sense.
Did I
Yeah,
actually do
Tiara's
this? No.
tank.
Okay.
Okay.
But that's your Stone Gaze being used there defensively, so you're at least going to push Tiaras out of that jungle for a little bit. He doesn't have the ult to fall back on for about a minute and a half, so if you're Infamous, you're starting to feel maybe a little bit more confident here, but Hokori, they're not willing to give up the momentum without a fight. You see the smoke play from them, 4-man smoke. Analog is going to sort of be the wild card here in the middle lane as they're going to push their way forward. Gardic is surged in. He's immediately hit up, though, by that disruption. That's going to sort of break this apart. The Cog pushback as well, but Wish is still going for it, and he did get the bushwhack down. So Michael should still be dying here. He is slowed up by Tiaras with that Scotty, so he is unable to get away, but you got Michael. That's not bad, but that's really not what Hokori wanted from that fight. All of the rest of Infamous are able to back off, but Tiaras is now into the west side jungle. They're the team with control-ish over the Roche pit, so it does get them something, just maybe not the direct kills they were hoping for.
At the same time, though, you can't help but feel like Lumiere's, at least build-up-wise, you see both of these carries are going for that Daedalus next. It just feels like Lumiere's getting a little bit more out of the map right now, where they are making these huge 5-man rotations, but Infamous are killing the right targets. They are not getting baited into trying to kill this Medusa. They're gauging their damage very well. Unfortunately, TRS is coming up on that level 20 mark pretty soon here, so that's when the team fights do get a little bit longer. They do get a little bit extended, but you're going to have this crit stick Ags, and now Hokori, they actually need to find an initiation. The past two fights, it's been them getting initiated on. We haven't seen a Faceless Void Chrono yet, and we need something from Gardic. He is the one that has the stun. His teammates are great follow-up stuns. Again, Bushwhack and Vacuum, they're not bad, but you need this Chrono to at least land on someone. He's trying to save it, but he hasn't even been able to use it defensively in a lot of these cases. We need more coming from this Faceless Void, and then we might see some of these buildings, some of these objectives spiral out of control. But we're still waiting. We're waiting for that play to be made in A.
Okay.
Looks like he's the smoke popper.
They're going to catch
This
him
is all
out
you're
here.
getting.
Oh, maybe not. Hook into the TP.
Vacuum.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, Gardic was sort of wondering if he needed to use the Chrono, but Vitalis says, I got this. We got the Vacuum down, much shorter cooldown, and A does get taken down. But yeah, as you said, ET, Gardic's got to be the guy here, and the thing that's kind of funny, he has itemized in a way that's really going to allow him to jump in. He's got himself the Ion Shell for the extra HP. He built a Hood of Defiance as his first major item, so at a certain point, maybe you even call upon him to almost make a suicidal initiation just to get in there, but they do need that Chrono. Without it, there's really not a whole lot of options for them to take the kind of larger scale team fight that they really want, and at this point, kind of feel like they need. So Gardic knows what he needs to do. He itemized in a position that's going to make it a little bit easier for him to get in there and survive long enough, but we just haven't seen him actually pull the trigger yet. Oh, okay, there it is. Chrono connecting onto 2. But where's the damage? They need someone to try and get in here. Michael is still not dead. There's going to be the back wall, though, into Analog's Rolling Thunder. So Michael, he is down, but Lumiere activated the BKB. That should allow him to fall back. So instead, they're going to try and focus on onto the Clockwork. A is taking a lot of damage here, and Analog does bring him down, but now Alone wants in. Sacred. Epicenter is going to lose maybe a third of its damage, but they're still in onto the Pango, but he heals himself up with the Essence Ring, and now the reinforcements have arrived. They get the pushback down onto the Storm Spirit. Can they keep him locked down? Not quite. But that cost Alone all of his mana, so he is now really out of this engagement, just as TRS is actually pushing in. So if you're Infamous, you don't want this anymore. You really just want to fall back. You are going to have to sacrifice the tower, but at least they only lose the supports there once again.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Lumiere didn't pop his BKB. If he pops it a little bit faster, maybe Michael is able to survive a little bit longer and get another spell off, and that forces at least a little bit more defensive play. Zip does kill the wave as well, so the push is dead, but Tiaras actually decided to finish up this Aghanim Scepter, which is not bad by any means, especially because you now have that cold-blooded that you're going to inevitably be playing against. It makes it that much harder to kill this Medusa, but it makes this Roshan pretty much impossible. Even though it feels like Hokori are now playing from ahead, they're playing with a little bit of a lead, you still cannot take this Roche unless you are really hard forcing it. Maybe if you get a DD rune, you could actually force it down, but it's just too difficult, and I'm looking over at Lumiere, who is going to have a Daedalus around the same time that you're going to finish up your Crystallis, And that is Infamous's the opening. That is their timing. That is when they can actually force you to take a fight where you are at a severe disadvantage, as well as looking at Sacred, who I think has turned his item build around. I'm not sure if he has a full Ags. Or no, he does have a full Ags completed up on the
Ooh.
Sand King, so those Burrow Strikes are going to be lethal. And that's where we, even though we got a two-man chrono there, I think it was an accidental two-man chrono, we need to still see more from Gardic. He's the one that's going to break open these objectives. Nobody else on his team can really do that. Maybe once Analog gets in there with his Blink Dagger, but still, you want that guaranteed follow-up disable, and you want Analog to also be helping you with the DPS just that little bit. Of course, he's gone for the Sange, so he is a little bit tankier, or more oriented to tank, as opposed to just getting that Diffusal Blade be more obnoxious instead, but I almost feel like there's too much in the TRS camp, and typically that's a fantastic strategy to just give absolutely everything to your Medusa, make sure that she has a good time. But you are playing versus this Lumiere Luna. You are playing versus this guy who has his Daedalus whenever he wants to send it out to him. And I can only imagine that's where Infamous are going to take the earth-shattering fight, where if they can kill 2 or 3 Hokori heroes without buyback, that is going to be Roche. That is going to be really the game starting to shift in Infamous's favor if they want it.
Just feels like there's a window right now for Hokori that they are obviously very much aware of and trying to take advantage of, but it hasn't quite gone the way that they need it to, and they're gonna have to do something soon. As you mentioned, that Daedalus, it's done. It is here. Lumiere is absolutely massive right now in terms of damage. The BKB should keep him safe from a lot of the lockdown on that Hokori side, which now means even more pressure on to Gardic for that Chronosphere. A lot of the other lockdown they have is just not effective if Lumiere is able to pop that BKB in time. So they're going to move their way forward. They do get in onto the Clockwork. He's going to try with the Glimmer, but it's not really enough. So A gets taken down. Analog got stuck up there for a moment, but he's able to jump right back down, and that's a solid pickup for the Hokori side. The problem is they're losing Gardic now elsewhere on the map, so they don't really have the means to go into a larger secondary engagement until he's back up, especially with the Rolling Thunder having been used. But Vitali, he wants in. They're going to try to jump in onto Michael. They pull him back with the Vacuum into the normal punch, so okay. Found themselves another pickoff, but I feel like I'm saying this every time there's a fight. Infamous only lost their supports.
Unfortunately, they are going to try and start it because TRS, he has that crit stick coming out. They have Pango, and I think this might be their slight opening, but Sacred, he actually cliffed himself, so he has to blink Burrow Strike if he wants to get in this Roche, but don't tell me the Illusion Rune. The Clockwork is going to be too much, though. The Flare is a little bit too much pressure for them to immediately go for it, but now everything is about this Roche, and TRS can 100% kill it now. As well as just having this Titan Sliver, he does so much more damage. If they lose eyes on this Roshan for just a few seconds here, it's going to continue to tick down. This is the forcing play.
Good flare from A, continuing to maintain that vision, but you see, look at this. The illusion from TRS is just sort of playing as that intercepting move, trying to block off A's clear shot into the pit with the hook, so...
Flare in one.
He's going to flare. He's got to go. He sees the help. They need to jump. They're going to go in, but TRS is the one to get the Aegis, and now alone, yeah, you got to go. He's going to try and zip himself out. Analog, though, trying to chase. Not going to be able to catch him as this fight is really breaking up. Gardic, though, he just dropped the Chronosphere down. They caught out Sacred. There's no Epi yet, and he is just really trapped in the middle of this fight. He is going to be taken down alone. Meanwhile, he gets caught by Analog further to the west, and, well, we said Hokori, they needed the fight. They needed Gardic to land the Chronosphere, and the way that they do it is by threatening Roshan. That forces a reaction from Infamous, and now they have finally lost actual core heroes, and the supports may actually be dead here too. Michael is sort of getting tracked down, and yeah, he's not getting out of that one. Hokori will finish him off. TRS gets the kill, and that is the perfect play that Hokori needed. That just really, maybe not wipes out Infamous's momentum, but definitely resets it.
And it's just this mind breaker on Pangolier. It just keeps on catching these heroes on Infamous off guard, as well as you had him going for the greedy build. He has an Aghanim Scepter on the Storm Spirit, so there's no way for him to naturally cleanse him. Not that he shouldn't have even known to cleanse himself from that silence. It's just Mindbreaker being a little bit of a busted item in this matchup. And of course, now you can start to kill your waves. Alone does have that zip TP for one, but carts are coming in, and even if you kill this wave, oh, okay, it's a lot of damage, but
not enough to take it out, though, and that's what they needed. But the Glyph is going to be deployed, so Tier 3 tower is still standing. Lumiere is going to sort of run him out there with the Lucent Beam, too. So if you're Hokori, do you want to try it again? Do you wait for your next creep wave? Go back in. You do still have the Aegis, but Looks like they're sort of eyeing up objectives elsewhere. Tiaras rotates out. They could push the bottom lane, really take control of the south side jungle. You see that happening here. They get the outpost. So if you take the outpost, you can push this in, you can get the tier 2 tower, and now all of a sudden, what's supposed to be Infamous' side of the map really won't be. They'll be sort of pushed back into their base, and Infamous, realizing that that's the potential play, are actually going to try and stop it right now. This is a 5-man smoke coming out from them. But they've got to find this, and this is where Alone might finally be able to shine with that Aghanim's build-up. If they're the team sort of making the jump, then your AoE Vortex does quite a bit more for you as opposed to having to react to the aggression from the enemy. As Gardic going to get pushed back here by the Cogs. Time walks himself forward. Meanwhile, we do see Alone zipping his way in. Who does he go on to? He's going to look for Vitali, but that's a very tanky hero to try and bring down. So instead, they'll focus on Widge. They do finish off that that Hoodwink, excuse me. But while they were going after that kill, A is sort of left in the middle to try and hold things off, and he will be picked off. Michael now falls as well. Supports are dead. Can the cores get out? Alone is waiting. But he may have to go because Lumiere's going to get hit up. He has to pop the BKB, and now here comes the fight. The Eclipse is going to be there, but the wall got thrown down. The vacuum, though, will not be coming. Vitali and Analog actually get taken down first, and they burn through the Aegis on the Medusa. Can they finish her off again? Gardic is coming in. Nice Chronosphere coming down, but that might just be a defensive maneuver. Tiaras, though, he wants the fight. He's going in. He's looking for the damage. Sacred dropping low, but the Yule Scepter is going to keep him alive. Now Tiaras really not sure if he wants to be here any longer, but he doesn't have much of a choice. He is going to get not hit by that Vortex, actually. Never mind. So maybe he can still make it away, but with the Spider Legs running out of duration, he can't get up onto the cliff. He just has to hold his ground, but he's kind of doing a decent job of it. Alone is running low on mana. Lumiere does not have his BKB now, so he has to be incredibly careful as well, and Analog rejoined the fight after buying back, so at this point it's actually Infamous who are the ones who have to back away.
And unfortunately, if he gets him with that Vortex, the fight does get a lot more complicated for the Medusa. But Lumiere, we saw there, the Eclipse, the level 25 as well, coming up right at the very, very key moment. With the Daedalus damage, they have to respect it, as well as if they're able to clear out that Luna illusion coming from the wall, he is never going to step into it after that wall is committed. So unless you have that secondary disable, which of course they didn't have, the Chrono was gone, the Hoodwink was still respawning, you can kite out this Medusa pretty heavily with this Shadow Demon, and that's where they definitely overextended for just a few moments there. Unfortunately, Tiaras did get a snake off, so he had that mana to play with. You had that situation where you still have to run, you have to kite out. And Lumiere, I think he had a slight misplay there where he actually was proccing just a little bit too hard. But now you've got 6,000 gold on your Luna. You're going to have this Aghanim Scepter if you want it. Lumiere always does this. He goes for the Ags Refresher build, and then you're going to see this Pangolier melt. You're going to see this Darkseer melt, and that's where Alone will finally have some more targets. My only worry is if they do get picked off, if they're the ones getting initiated on, Hokori still have this huge advantage where the Snake is getting to the point where she's unkillable. That's why she's going for this Agi Blink. Her only issue now is finding the heroes to hit. But once she gets that item, it gets so much easier for Tiaras to play. And with no Roshan to play around, we're going to see Infamous lose sight of a lot of the map. They need to make some really nifty plays. Otherwise, it's just going to be Hokori locking them out of this game.
Yeah, and Lumiere does pull the trigger on that Aghanim Scepter purchase. That does knock him slightly out of buyback range, but he's only 100 away, so should be able to get back that back up relatively quickly. Speaking of Ags, though, there's one out on the Hoodwink. Widge picking it up for the Boomerang play, so that honestly could come into effect in that next fight. If they can get that Boomerang, get that mark down, then whoever gets hit by it is going to have to be maybe not defensive, but a little bit more cautious with regards to their positioning. As Alone zipping in, looking for Gardic. Well, okay. Honestly, that may have been a little bit too timid. Vitali was nearby, but I think you still could have gone for it, but better safe than sorry if you're alone. Tiaras is now sort of making his way over, so they were very much afraid of the reprisal if Alone took too long to find that kill. So he is going to have to fall back, but that's not a great sign for Infamous. If they can't go out and maybe find some of those quick pickoffs on what were supposed to be relatively squishy heroes, then they have to try and go for a fight. You do see them smoking up now, so they recognize we can't find picks. Gardic is kind of the easiest other than Widge for us to kill, and we couldn't get him quickly enough, so we've got to try and take the fight, but they've got all their ults up, and just as we said the last time around, if they can initiate, things can go well for them, but they've got to get the angle, they've got to have that vision, and the scan, actually very nicely placed, will tell them there is somebody up on that high ground, but how do they approach it? Do they send the flare? Does A just hook shot in?
They need to find someone in the next second here.
Tiaras. Nope. Okay, they don't jump in onto him. Instead, they're going to go for Witch, trying to lock down the Hoodwink, but they don't actually have the damage, so instead they will focus on Tiaras. They did hit him up with the Burrow into the epicenter. Tiaras very low on HP. His mana shield's pretty much gone, but he's still holding his ground. Sacred, though, comes in with the Burrow. Tiaras is dropping. They need to be able to finish him off. They're not really focusing him, though, as he's going to use the Spider Legs to actually get down onto the low ground, picks up the Haste Rune, and is just walking away. Sacred, he missed with the Burrow. That is unfortunate. If Tiaras had fallen there, maybe something good can happen, but as it turns out, Tiaras dances his way through everything. And it's Infamous who just really kind of blow that fight. They lose a couple of heroes, a couple of buybacks have to be committed, and now they are going to be pushed back into a defensive position.
And it's incredibly unfortunate. They were able to get that Darkseer illusion, and then the Chrono afterwards. It was finally the Chrono we were waiting for. And Tiaras, the entire reason he got all of his mana burn there was because of that Eclipse commitment. He felt like he needed to zone out this Medusa, and Medusa wasn't even able to cast her Stone Gaze. That's how perma-stunned she really was in that one moment. But now, none of that matters. It was just too good of a play coming in with that Rolling Thunder, with that Chrono. And now, double dieback, or rather, double buyback coming from your supports in Sacred. And if you lose either of them, it's going to feel like you can't fight over that top racks. I think Hokori, they're starting to feel like this game is out of Infamous's hands. You have this Eclipse up in 50 seconds, but because you itemized for this Eclipse, you don't have your Refresher yet. Rather, you have your Refresher in another 1,000 gold. You aren't going to be able to want to defend. You don't have that right-click build going for you. And even alone, it still feels like he doesn't have enough mana to exist in these fights. If he doesn't get anything done with his first sip, with his first combo, he is just not big enough. He is not there, and this is the problem with Storm Spirit, where if you get locked out of this game, you lose the map control, you feel like an offlaner. You feel like you don't have that farm priority, and you see him even behind Sacred right now, after Sacred has bought back already. This is just becoming a not able to play Storm game. You just simply don't have enough in the tank to kill these heroes. It's starting to come to fruition. It's the damage mitigation meta. It's finally coming to an end, I think, as now you have the Agi Blink on Tiaras. You've got one Rax left. They really need one Dream Fight. They've got double Eclipse. That is the biggest advantage Infamous has. They're pretty much all in on that.
And this is really more of the reason why, prior to that fight breaking out, we were sort of talking about Infamous needing to be the squad initiating. As you said, if they can get in there, if they could have killed Tiaras, things look a little bit different. And it's really not necessarily that Infamous don't handle that well. It's that Hokori just plays so much better. As you said, Analog with the Rolling Thunder, forcing the separation, the Chronosphere from Gardic. You really just break up that assault so that Infamous don't have all of their power concentrated in one spot, which is why they need a clear-cut initiation. That one was not quite so much. Alone zips his way forward. A got his sort of smoke pop before he was able to push in. This is the play, though. This is looking quite a bit better. They jump in. Widge is already dead. He'll buy back immediately, though. But Tiaras, well, he's already dropping low again. He's trying to fall back. This time, Infamous doing a much better job of maintaining this cohesion. Most of their heroes are together. They did just lose Michael, but they're in onto the Medusa. If they can take Tiaras down, do they have the damage for it? No, they don't. Tiaras, he just mans up. He does eventually die, but sells his life quite dearly as he takes out a couple, but now Lumiere, yeah, that's a problem. He's going to be taken down. There was a buyback from Alone, but now he used all his mana to get back to the fight.
What just happened?
Yeah, I don't know. They don't have buyback on Dusa, but they're going to now force in both of your lanes. I don't think you have buybacks on anyone. No, there's only buybacks on the Hokori side. This might be the saddest tier 4s dying. You have a Shadow Demon in 15 seconds here, but they had Tiaras, but Tiaras had 2 right clicks. He was able to kite onto the high ground for the second time. Infamous fight underneath this eye spot, underneath all of Hokori's vision, and it felt like they could take the fight for just a brief moment there. He had no mana for any more snakes, but Alone gets double crit, Sacred gets double crit. You don't have anything longevity-wise. Now you're going to be Megas. And even though this Medusa is dead for 40 seconds, I don't think they can actually kill your Ancient in the time span that is allowed for them. But this is 100% going to be Megas. Oh, Michael. Maybe Michael's life on top of it.
Good for his
still
staff.
playing pretty well. Oh, there you go.
He did everything he could, but Analog has the longer range with the Swashbuckle, and now, yeah, this should be Megas, but that just... I mean, I think it was just the RNG there. The crit out from the Medusa just turns that fight around. It looked like Infamous had just barely gotten the strength they needed to get over the hump, and then you lose Alone. Lumiere then doesn't have his backup, and oh boy, A. Yeah, he doesn't have a Force Staff like his teammate did, and That Force Staff didn't even actually save the Shadow Demon, so that's pretty much it. They've got some heroes coming back up, but the tier 4s are already falling. But we'll see what can happen, though. Lumiere's got the BKB, but he doesn't have either of the Eclipses right now, so he could push in. Yeah, okay. They're not going to give it a go. The GG will be called, and Hokori, they take game 1. This was a game they absolutely could not afford to drop. We mentioned earlier, they need a 2-0 sweep in this one to get themselves to the upper half of that playoff bracket, and they start things off pretty spectacularly with a game 1 win.
And really, I wouldn't have it have gone any other way. If Infamous did win this game, then it would have killed a lot of the tension. Everything would have been settled at this point. But now Hokori have the opportunity to pull the rug out from their opponents. They can send Infamous to that lower bracket, and this would get really scary for them. And they had that perfect initiation. They were able to get that vision coming in from that flare. The biggest problem is after that flare, Sacred got that 3-man stun and felt like they were going to finally turn this game on its head. Lumiere putting all of the Eclipses onto TRS as well. But you have this Spider Legs item on the Medusa. He walks away. He doesn't have any mana. You have to keep jumping over and over, keep on committing that Zip Lightning, and alone runs out of mana. You run out of gas in the tank. At the end of the day, if Hokori lost that fight, if they were forced to continue playing on, you still have this opportunity where you can just buy a BKB on the Medusa. So it's not like Infamous were out of the woods if that miracle fight did happen for them, but there was just simply too much left in the tank. Hokori had a much simpler to execute lineup for the second time. We're seeing a Medusa simply get to play her game, simply get to play around teammates that end up outlasting you, and Infamous having that Clockwork. While Clockwork is one of the heroes that SA values above pretty much anything else, they don't have enough burst damage coming from their 4 and their 5. They run out of damage, and we see again, damage mitigation is the name of the game, and Hokori have too much of it. You just run out, and Infamous, they had a good showing. It felt like they were going to pull something back there, but just too many miracle plays needed to happen. And even though you have this cool build on Lumiere, once those BKBs could have been finished for Hokori, the game was going to be over. I think they were really on a timer. They had their opportunity, and it just doesn't work out for them.
Yeah, I think Hokori, as we said, do a pretty spectacular job of making sure they're the team setting the tempo. It was Infamous who sort of wanted to go maybe a little bit faster to try and shut down that Medusa. Not only are they not allowed to do that because of Hokori's play, they're then the team on the defensive for quite a lot of that match as well, and it led to those scenarios you were describing where they just needed so many different things to break their way, and while it was still possible, Hokori had a lineup and a strategy that was orders of magnitude easier for them to pull off. So Hokori looked good in game 1, some momentum heading into game 2. As we said, they do need both of these wins. Just one is not enough. They want that upper bracket spot, and they are going to be fighting for it. So we'll see what game 2 has in store. We're going to be moving into that draft in a little bit. Before we go, though, another word from one of the sponsors of the event. It's Mate Mate this time around. You can purchase your Mate Mate at bts.gg/Mate Mate. Use the promo code BTSDota. If you use that code, you get 15% off your order, free international shipping, and you are entered into the grand prize giveaway. You can win Secret Lab chairs, an Aftershock PC gaming rig, or some Razer keyboard and mouse bundles. The winner of that drawing is going to be announced on August 23rd. So purchase your Mate Mate, use BTS Dota as your code, you're entered in, and who knows, maybe a week from now you've got some cool Dota-related swag and some Mate Mate to drink. So thank you to Mate Mate for sponsoring the event. Thank you for putting together that giveaway as well. There we go, I can do English. And yeah, we're going to be right back for the final game of the day. One last match to determine which of these two squads is going to that upper bracket. So stick around. We'll be bringing game 2 your way in just a little bit.